What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is about the drama series Stranger Things. It is currently on Netflix with 3 seasons so far, and we are T-minus 2 hours from the release of season 4. So by the time this video is probably up and done being edited, season 4 will be among us already. Yes, I know I said among us. We will be getting 7 episodes from that today, and to July 1st, the director said there was so much to the new season, that they just decided to separate the two. And beyond all of the content we have already received from that, they have announced that Stranger Things will sadly be ending after its 5th season, which will probably be filmed sometime later this year. So let's go ahead and break down each of the seasons, starting with season 1, obviously, which is simply titled Stranger Things. So Stranger Things season 1 has 8 episodes. Each of them are titled as chapter so-and-so, correlating to what episode it is. Season 1 was released on July 15th, 2016, so 6 years ago. So I don't blame them for wanting to end it after season 5, because it's been a while. Chapter 1 is just titled Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers, and it takes place in November of 1983 in Hawkins, Indiana, starting out with a scientist being attacked by an unseen creature at a U.S. government laboratory. Soon after this, in that same night, 12-year-old Will Byers, who is played by Noah Schnapp, encounters this creature and mysteriously vanishes while cycling home from a Dungeons & Dragons session with his friends, Mike Wheeler, who is played by Finn Wolfhard, Dustin Henderson, who is played by Gaten Mazzarano. Please don't come for me. And then Lucas, who is played by Caleb McLaughlin. The next morning, when Will fails to return home, Will's mother, Joyce Byers, who is played by Winona Ryder, goes to the police station to report him missing, and deals with Jim Hopper, who is played by David Harbour. Yes. And he starts a search for Will and assures Joyce that almost all missing children are quickly found. The lab's director, Martin Brenner, investigates an organic substance oozing from the lab's basement, claiming that the girl cannot have gone far. At this same time, a nervous young girl wanders into a local diner. The owner's name is Benny, and learns from the tattoo of 011 on her arm that her name is 11.
Good night.
Good night, love.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. And 11 is played by Millie Bobby Brown, my personal queen. I love her. She's amazing. I watched her in Enola. I watched a couple of her other things. And I have some of her products from Florence by Mills. They're good. And I worked at Ulta. Please don't judge me. Brenner, who is monitoring the phone lines, sends agents to the diner after Benny calls social services. The agents unfortunately kill Benny, but 11 manages to escape using her telekinetic abilities. Joyce's phone short-circuits after receiving a mysterious phone call that she believes is from Will, and while searching for Will in the woods, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas come across 11. And that's where episode 1 ends. And then we pick up with episode 2, which is titled Chapter 2, The Weirdo on Maple Street. The boys bring 11 to Mike's house, where they disagree on what to do. Mike formulates a plan for 11 to pretend to be a runaway and seek help from his mother, Karen, but 11 refuses, revealing that bad men are after her. Will's brother Jonathan visits his estranged father, Lonnie, in Indianapolis to search for Will, but Lonnie rebuffs him. And Jonathan is played by Charlie Heaton. Again, another amazing actor. Like, all of this cast is just absolutely amazing. They were meant for these characters. Yada, yada, yada. Hopper's search party discovers a scrap of hospital gown at the lab, or near the lab. After recognizing Will in a photo and demonstrating her telekinesis, Eleven convinces the boys to trust her as they believe she could find Will. Using the Dungeons & Dragons board, 11 indicates that Will is on the upside-down side of the board and is being hunted by the Demogorgon, which is the unseen creature that we have seen. Mike's sister Nancy, who is played by Natalia Dyer, and her friend Barb Holland go to a party with Nancy's boyfriend Steve Harrington, who is played by Joe Keery. Searching for Will near Steve's house, Jonathan secretly photographs the party. Joyce receives another phone call from Will, hears music playing from his stereo, and sees the creature coming through the wall. Left alone by the swimming pool, Barb is attacked by the Demogorgon and vanishes. And that is where episode 2 ends, with Barbara going missing, and we'll pick right up in episode 3, which is titled Chapter 3, Holly Jolly. Now, this did have a change in directing and written. So it was directed by Shawn Levy, and it was written by Jessica Mecklenburg. So it was released on the same day, just had different producer or people who directed and wrote it, I guess. Barb awakens in the Upside Down, a decaying, overgrown alternate dimension. She attempts to escape, but is attacked by the Demogorgon. So at this point in time, that leaves 3 people that we know of that have been attacked by the Demogorgon. The scientist in the beginning, Will, and Barb. Joyce believes Will is communicating through pulse and light bulbs. Like when the lights flicker, she believes that's him communicating. Brenner allows Hopper to view doctored security footage from the night Will vanished, leaving Hopper to investigate Brenner. Discovering his involvement with Project MKUltra, a CIA experience into the brainwashing potential of psychoactive drugs, and that a woman named Terry Ives alleged years earlier that her daughter was taken by Brenner. 11 recalls that Brenner, whom she calls Papa, punishing her for refusing to telekinetically hurt a cat. Steve destroys Jonathan's camera after discovering the missing photos from the party. Nancy later recovers a photo of Barb, realizing that she is missing. Returning to Steve's house to investigate, Nancy encounters the Demogorgon, but manages to escape. So that at that point, there's 4. We don't really know the fate of Will and Barb at this point in time, but we know that one of them died and one of them managed to escape. Joyce paints an alphabetic board on her wall with Christmas lights, allowing Will to sign to her that he is right here and that she needs to run. Believing Elle knows where Will is, the boys ask her to lead them to him. 11 leads them to a quarry just as Will's apparent body is recovered from the water by a search party. And that is where episode 3 ends. Super emotional, like everyone's tensions are running high. Like shit, I was crying. I don't cry very often. Chapter 4 is called The Body. It is directed by Shawn Levy and written by Justin Doble. And it starts with Joyce refusing to believe that the body found at the quarry is Will's. Mike feels betrayed by 11 until she proves that Will is still alive, channeling his voice through Mike's walkie-talkie. The boys theorize that 11 could use a ham radio at their school to communicate with Will. Nancy notices a figure behind Barb in Jonathan's photo, which Jonathan realizes matches his mother's description of the Demogorgon. Nancy tells police about Barb's disappearance. She later fights with Steve, who only cares about not getting in trouble with his father. Hopper has suspicions regarding the authenticity of the body found in the quarry, which he learns is that the usual coroner was sent home and confronts the state trooper who found it, beating the trooper until he admits that he was ordered to lie. The boys sneak 11 into their school to use the radio while Joyce hears Will's voice in her living room wall. Tearing away the wallpaper, she sees him. 11 uses the radio to channel Will talking to his mother. Hopper goes to the morgue and finds a body that is a dummy, and suspecting that Brenner is responsible, breaks into the lab. And that's kind of where episode 4 ends. Lots of drama. Everyone's tensions are running high. There's a lot of betrayal, a lot of sadness, a lot of emotions. And honestly, I don't blame them because, Will just supposedly died. And that sends a lot of people into a tailspin. And then chapter 5 is called The Flea and the Acrobat. It is again directed by the Duffer Brothers and is written by Alison Tatlock. And it starts with Hopper searching the lab, finding the substance in the basement before being knocked out by the lab's guards. KO'd. He's just... The boys ask their science teacher, Mr. Clark, if it would be possible to travel between alternate dimensions, to which he answers that there could be a theoretical gate between dimensions. All of this is happening, I believe, at Will's funeral. So they even had a funeral for him. The boys... Hopper awakens at his house and finds a hidden microphone, realizing that Joyce was right the whole time. And Hopper's like, oh, fuck. He was so angry. He was tearing everything apart, trying to find this microphone, all of that. So whether the people of Hawkins like it or not, they are being monitored. People are listening to their phone calls, watching their every move. You're basically living under constant surveillance. And if you're not normal, people are gonna watch you. The boys follow their compasses, hoping that a gate would disrupt the Earth's electromagnetic field. 11 recalls memories of being placed in a sensory deprivation tank to telepathically eavesdrop on a man speaking Russian. While listening, she came across the Demogorgon. Scared of encountering the Demogorgon again, 11 redirects the compasses. Luke misinterprets this as an act of treason, leading Mike and Lucas to fight, and 11 to telekinetically fling Lucas off Mike. While Dustin and Mike tend to the unconscious Lucas, 11 runs off. Nancy and Jonathan formulate a plan to kill the Demogorgon, and searching in the woods, they encounter a wounded deer. Nancy follows it through a gate to the Upside Down, drawing its attention to her. So this is the second time Nancy has been in the Upside Down in this season, and while she's kind of a badass, it's also kind of stupid. Because, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that thing. And that's kind of where episode 5 ends. Whew. And this episode, these were super intense for me. I was like, what? I was so confused by it. So episode 6 is titled Chapter 6, The Monster, directed by the Duffer Brothers and written by Jesse Nicholson Lopez. So this picks up right after Nancy goes through the gate. It is kind of having the Demogorgon chase after her and all of this. And Jonathan pulls her back through the gate. That night, Nancy is afraid to be alone and asks Jonathan to stay in her bedroom. Steve, who is attempting to reconcile with Nancy, sees them together through her bedroom window and assumes they are dating. Joyce and Hopper track down Terry Ives, who is catatonic and attended to by her sister Becky, who explains that Terry was a Project MK Ultra participant who, while unknowingly pregnant and believes her daughter Jane was kidnapped by Brenner at birth due to Jane's supposed telekinetic and telepathic abilities. Nancy and Jonathan stockpile weapons to kill the Demogorgon, theorizing that it is attracted by blood. Steve gets into a fist fight with Jonathan after calling Nancy the S word. I'm not going to say it, but it is a 4-letter S word, starting with S and ending with T, if you know what I mean. 11 walks into a grocery store and shoplifts several boxes of Eggo waffles. Searching for 11, Mike and Dustin are ambushed by a group of bullies, but are rescued by her as she uses her powers to break one bully's arm after he attempts to kill Mike. 11 collapses and recalls being asked by Brenner to contact the Demogorgon. In her terror, she inadvertently opens the gate. She tearfully admits to Mike that she is responsible for allowing the Demogorgon to enter this dimension. Lucas sees agents who have tracked down 11 preparing to ambush Mike's house. And that's kind of like, and then there's like this big, like, huge thing. Yeah. Now, these are quick rundowns. I'm not going to tell you everything that happens in the season because that would take way too long and none of us have time for that. So these are just like quick rundowns of kind of like the major things that happen in this each episode. If you want the full rundown, go watch it because I realized that I had the full season and it was almost 40 pages. So I don't kind of have time for that and I don't have the attention span for that. So, episode 7 is chapter The Bathtub. It is, again, directed by the Duffer Brothers, written by Justin Doble. And it picks up with Lucas warning Mike that agents are searching for 11. Mike, Dustin, and Elle flee the house. And 11 telekinetically flips one of the agents' fans that blocks their path, and the kids escape. Lucas reconciles with Mike and 11 and the kids hide from the agents. Nancy and Jonathan reveal their knowledge of the Demogorgon to Joyce and Hopper. The group contacts the kids and everyone meets at the Byers' house. Joyce and Hopper realize that 11 is Jane Ives. The group asks 11 to search for Will and Barb telepathically, but her earlier feats have weakened her. They break into the middle school and build a makeshift sensory deprivation tank to amplify 11's powers. 11 finds Barb dead and Will alive using her telepathy, hiding in the upside-down version of his backyard fort. Realizing that the gate is in the basement of the lab, Hopper and Joyce break into the lab but are apprehended by security guards. Nancy and Jonathan head back to the Byers' house, planning to attract and kill the Demogorgon so it can't interfere with Joyce and Hopper. In the Upside Down, the Demogorgon breaks into Will's fort, which is called Castle Byers, by the way. We kind of see it in between the seasons from now, and then we see it again in season 3. So, whoop whoop. And then chapter 8, which I believe is the final episode. Yes, it is. Is directed by the Duffer Brothers. The story is by Paul Ditchner, and the teleplay is by the Duffer Brothers. Hopper is now haunted by the death of his daughter, Sarah, from cancer years earlier, gives up 11's location to Brenner, who in exchange allows Hopper and Joyce to enter the Upside Down to rescue Will. Nancy and Jonathan cut their hands to attract the Demogorgon at the Byers' house. Steve arrives just as the Demogorgon appears, intending to apologize to Jonathan about their fight. Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan fight the Demogorgon and light it on fire, forcing it to retreat into the Upside Down. Meanwhile, 11 and the boys hide in the middle school, when Brenner and his agents arrive to kidnap 11. She kills most of them before collapsing from exhaustion. The Demogorgon appears and attacks Brenner, seemingly killing him. Hopper and Joyce find Will in the Upside Down unconscious with a tendril down his throat and revive him using CPR. The Demogorgon finds the kids and 11 disintegrates it but disappears. Will is hospitalized. 1 month later, Nancy is back together with Steve and both are friends with Jonathan. Will coughs up a slug-like creature and has a vision of the Upside Down, but hides it from his family. And that's where season 1 ends. So, kind of going to tell you guys what I thought of it. So, this was a great season for me. It is a great introduction to several of our main characters, especially 11 and Will, because I feel like they play some of the biggest roles in this season. I also like how they set up this connection between 11 and Mike, because it shows kids and young teens that it is okay to have a crush on someone when you're young, and sets up this whole love at first sight type of thing, which I'm a true believer in, and I think it's just super cute. It also tells people that it's okay to still play board games and do all of that and use your imagination when you're a young kid. Nowadays, I feel like a lot of kids are glued to their cell phones, so I feel like this is a refreshing thing for us. And so obviously, kind of hopping into the breakdown of season 2, which is, so after season 1, there's season 2, which is titled Stranger Things 2. And it takes place a little less than a year after season 1, around Halloween. On October 28th, 1984, a girl with the psychic power to make people see things and with a tattoo reading 008 on her arm is part of a criminal gang that manages to rob a bank and get away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In Hawkins, the town prepares for Halloween. A new girl at school, Maxine, Max Mayfield, captures the boys' attention. Joyce is dating her old high school classmate, Bob Newby, and Hopper investigates a field of pumpkins mysteriously rotting, and conspiracy theorist Murray Bowman investigates the people who sighted Eleven, believing her to be a Russian spy. Mike and Nancy deal with their respective losses of Eleven and Barb, and Will has been experiencing episodes of apparent hallucinations of the Upside Down, an enormous tentacled shadow monster. Joyce and Hopper take Will to see the new lab's director, Dr. Sam Owens, who has been giving Will routine medical exams ever since his return. Owen theorizes that Will's episodes are PTSD. Huh?
Good night.
Good night.
I have been trying to sleep for the past 20 minutes.
I'm sorry, love. So, Owens theorizes that Will... Good night.
I'm tired.
Then go to bed. I'll be in... So Owens theorizes that Will's episodes are PTSD brought on by the anniversary of his disappearance. The gate in the lab's basement has been growing, worrying Owens. Nancy and Steve have dinner with Barb's parents, who still believe their daughter to be missing, and who have hired Murray to find her. Hopper goes home to a cabin in the woods where he secretly lives with Eleven. And that is where the first episode of season 2 leaves off, with the realization that Elle is still alive and she is safe, as of now, with Hopper. And chapter 2 is called Trick or Treat Freak. Flashbacks reveal that Eleven escaped from the Upside Down but was forced to hide from agents. In the present, it is Halloween. Eleven asks Hopper if she can go trick-or-treating, but Hopper insists that she needs to remain hidden until he can reach an agreement with Owens, allowing her to live a normal life. Frustrating the homebound Eleven. More pumpkin fields rot across town, and Hopper discovers an organic substance similar to the substance in the lab in the fields. Nancy wants to tell Barb's parents the truth about her death, but Steve says it is a bad idea, as the parents might come after them if they've told anyone the truth. Or the agents, excuse me. Instead, they attend a Halloween party, where Nancy gets drunk and berates Steve for his lack of empathy for Barb's parents. Steve leaves and tells Jonathan to take Nancy home. The boys go trick-or-treating and are later joined by Max. During the night, Will has another episode and tells Mike about his visions, leading Mike to admit that he is trying to contact Eleven. Eleven tries to contact Mike using her powers but is unsuccessful. Dustin returns home after trick-or-treating and finds a strange creature in his trash can. Strange creatures, don't fly with me. Chapter 3 is called The Pollywog. It's directed by Sean Levy and written by Justin Lobel. And season 2 came out on October 27th, 2017. So, almost a little over a year after, I guess. Yeah, a little over a year after the first season came out. Again, we start with more flashbacks, revealing that Hopper found Eleven in the woods and agreed to take care of her in his grandfather's old hunting cabin if she agreed not to leave the cabin. In the present, Bob encourages Will to face his fears, not understanding the extent of Will's episodes. Nancy persuades Jonathan to help her tell Barb's parents the truth, and and the pair arrange a meeting with Barb's mother in public park the following day, fearing that Owens may be tapping the phone lines. The creature Dustin found in his trash can is a small slug-like animal that he names Dart Canyon, aka Dart. He shows Dart to the other kids, and Will concludes that it is a form of the Upside Down, as it makes a similar noise to the one Will heard in his hallucinations. Becoming increasingly concerned about the pumpkin fields, Hopper accuses Owens of failing to keep the gate contained. Frustrated with being holed up, 11 leaves to look for Mike at the school and sees him arguing with Max and mistakes it as flirting. Heartbroken, she leaves. Will suffers from another episode and follows Bob's advice to confront the shadow monster, but it forces a tentacle down his throat.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Here.
Hmm?
You've been saving my life.
And that's kind of where the first episode, or the episode ends. It's not the first one, it's the third one. And we can hop right in with Chapter 4, Will the Wise. It is directed by Sean Levy and written by Paul Ditcher. And Joyce and the kids awaken an unconscious Will. Joyce takes Will home, but finds him acting strangely, drawing scribbles on pages and demanding that the house be kept cold. Joyce calls Hopper, and together they discover the scribbles line up. Hopper recognizes the drawings represent vines, and he leaves. Nancy and Jonathan are caught by agents when they try to contact Barb's mother and are taken to the lab, where Owen shows them the portal to the Upside Down and admits that Barb died in the Upside Down and says that he wanted to prevent foreign governments from learning of it. They are released, and it is revealed that Nancy secretly recorded Owen's mission. An infatuated Lucas tries to get closer to Max, but her violent older stepbrother Billy intervenes. So Max is played by Sadie Sink. She again is an amazing actor. I love her. And Billy is played by Dasray Montgomery. Both amazing actors. Dasray is so cute. Like I could just, yes, I have a boyfriend, I know, but leave me alone. 11 argues with Hopper over her sneaking out, culminating in her destroying the cabin's windows in a fit of rage. While cleaning up the mess the following morning, she finds Hopper's research into her biological mother, Terry, and tries to contact Terry with her powers. Dustin finds Dart has broken out of its cage, devoured his pet cat, and is an infant Demogorgon. Hopper digs into one of the pumpkin fields and finds a tunnel leading into the Upside Down. So, ooh, spooky. And that's kind of where episode 4 ends. And we hop right into episode 5, which is directed by Andrew Stanton and written by Jesse Nicholson Lopez. And chapter 5 is titled Dig Dug. Hopper becomes trapped in the tunnels and passes out. Mike sleeps over at the Byers' house to help Will recover. Will has a vision of Hopper leading Joyce to recruit Bob's help to determine its meaning. Bob identifies the network as a map of Hawkins and the pumpkin fields as the place Hopper was going. Nancy and Jonathan take the tape of Owen's admission to Murray, who realizes the public will not believe the fantasy story and suggests watering it down to make it more plottable. Lucas reveals the truth of Will's disappearance to Max. Dustin traps Dart in his basement and enlists Steve's help to recapture it. 11 tracks down Terry and Becky Ives. Terry and 11 are able to communicate using their psychic powers, and Terry reveals to 11 that she tried to rescue her at the lab and was subjected to a brain-damaging dose of shock therapy by Brenner. 11 learns there was another girl trained like her. Joyce, Bob, Will, and Mike are able to rescue Hopper through scientists. Those scientists at the lab soon arrive and set the tunnels on fire. As this happens, Will collapses and begins convulsing and screaming in agony. Because now that Will is part of this creature they call the Mind Flayer, he feels everything that they feel. So everything they do to the Mind Flayer is going to cause Will an extreme amount of pain, which is not fun. I have really bad knees. Sorry guys, that's why I'm shifting constantly. And then chapter 6 is called The Spy, directed by Andrew Stanton, written by Kate Treyfry. Will is rushed to the lab demonstrating memory loss. Owen theorizes that the shadow monster is a virus which has spread to Will's brain and is controlling him, and that the creatures from the Upside Down share a hive mind and therefore damaging the tunnels will be lethal to the now infected Will. Nancy and Jonathan spend the night at Murray's, which forces them to admit their feelings for each other. And the following morning, the trio send copies of the tape of Owen's admission to numerous newspapers around the country. Upon returning to the Byers house, Nancy and Jonathan discover Will's drawings, and Lucas and Max regroup with Dustin and Steve, and the group attempts to lure Dart to a junkyard. Max apologizes for being hostile to Lucas, explaining that Billy's violence is a result of his father remarrying to Max's mother. To the group's horror, Dart arrives, flanked by a pack of adolescent monsters. The group is cornered until the pack unexpectedly runs away, and Will discovers a location that the monster prevents him from seeing. Unaware that Will is being manipulated by the monster, Owen sends in a team to investigate. The team is attacked by the adolescent monsters who make their way into the lab. And then chapter 7 is titled The Lost Sister, and this kind of focuses more on Elle and her sister. 8. This is directed by Rebecca Thomas and is written by Justin Doble. So 11 travels to Chicago and finds the other girl from Terry's memories named Collie. Realizing they have similar tattoos and were both experimented on by Brenner, 11 and Collie consider themselves sisters. Collie has the ability to project images into people's minds and lives among a street game who seek revenge on Brenner. 11 reveals that Brenner is dead, so the gang decide to kill the man who tortured Terry instead. Collie helps 11 to hone her abilities by demonstrating that channeling her anger is the key to strengthening her powers. After 11 uses her powers to find the gang's target named Ray, the gang travels to Ray's apartment to kill him.
I'm warning you, when you come in there, I'll be cranky.
Okay.
How's the video?
11 begins to choke Ray with her powers, leading him to desperately claim that Brenner is still alive.
Kitty.
11 refuses to kill Ray after seeing a photo of his 2 young daughters, who are discovered at that same moment to be contacting the police, and refuses to allow Collie to kill him. The gang flees to their hideout, and Collie insists 11 either stay and avenge her mother or return to Hawkins. 11 has a vision of Mike and Hopper's plight at the lab and decides to return while Collie and her gang escape from the police. And that's basically the last time we ever hear of them.
I must be tired.
Why?
Because I feel like the table moved.
It hasn't, as far as I know.
I'm locking us in for the night. Good night, my darling.
Good night. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, I guess I'll be cranky.
I'll be quiet. I'll just leave my laptop out here and pick it up in the morning.
My dog. You have to move her.
I will. And then chapter 8 is called The Mind Flayer. It is written and directed by the Duffer Brothers. The pack of creatures attack the lab, killing most of the scientists, and realizing that Will is a spy for the monster, Mike convinces Joyce to sedate Will to prevent the creature from tracking them. Mike, Joyce, Bob, and Owens take Will's unconscious body to the lab security room to barricade themselves from the creature. The lab's power goes out, and Bob volunteers to reset the breakers and allow the group to escape. Bob's mission succeeds, allowing Mike, Joyce, Hopper, and Will to escape. Dr. Owens then stays behind to guide Bob to the way out. However, the monsters attack and maul him to death in front of Joyce, leaving her devastated. The survivors are rescued by Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, Dustin, Lucas, and Max and return to the Byers house. Desperate to seek revenge on the shadow monster, who Dustin realizes is equivalent to the Mind Flayer in Dungeons & Dragons, the group theorizes that the Mind Flayer wishes to spread into this universe and that killing it will kill all the creatures connected to it, including Will. Using Morse code, they are able to communicate with the real Will, who instructs them to close gate. The Mind Flayer finds their locations and sends the creatures after them. As the creatures close in, one suddenly crashes through the window and lands on the floor dead. The door then unlocks itself and 11 walks in, having dispatched the other creatures. So, yeah, super emotional. Will returns, or not Will, 11 returns after all of this time. Everyone's happy. Mike's angry, the whole I'm in love with her thing. Chapter 9 is called The Gate, and after a brief reunion, 11 and the group devise a plan to close the gate without killing Will. Hopper and 11 head to the lab to close the portal, on the way seeing Dr. Owens, who has been attacked and injured upon attempting to escape, while Jonathan, Nancy, and Joyce purge the virus from Will by overheating him in Hopper's cabin. To prevent the creatures from attacking Hopper and 11, the rest of the gang enter the tunnels to lure the pack. Billy arrives at the Byers house, having been instructed to find Max by his father, and gets into a fight with Steve. Max manages to sedate him, and the group enter the tunnels to enact their plan. Nancy manages to release Will from the Mind Flayer's grasp by branding him with a poker. Ow! Despite the Mind Flayer's attempt to thwart her, 11 unleashes her anger, successfully closing the gate and killing the creatures. 1 month later, Nancy's tape has exposed the lab, leading to its closure. Barb receives a funeral, and Owens, who survived his injuries, forges a birth certificate for 11, naming her Jane Hopper. Mike, 11, Dustin, Will, Lucas, and Max attend their school's winter dance, and in the Upside Down, the Mind Flayer is still alive, towering over the school, and appears to be watching the group. Dun dun dun! Crazy. So this season is even better than the first, as it shows more character development than last season. We also see that some characters are humbled a lot. For example, Steve Harrington. We see him get knocked off his high horse by Billy, and I feel like because of this, he stops being all self-centered and opens his eyes and becomes a damn good babysitter. Quoting Steve himself. Still not my favorite season, though. I mean, we meet Billy. I think he's a total asshole. And we kind of see the relationships between everyone blossom. I mean, Jonathan and Nancy are dating. Fun fact, they're actually dating in real life. And just, it's good. I mean, character development-wise, lots more action than the first. And I'm super excited to tell you guys about Season 3. And finally, as of right now, we have Season 3, which is called Stranger Things 3, and that takes place in the summer of '85. And this was released in July 4th, 2019. Kind of ironic, honestly. End of June 1984, Soviet scientists attempt to force open a new gate to the Upside Down. 1 year later, in Hawkins, the popularity of the new Starcourt Mall has forced many local businesses to close, angering the townspeople. Mike and 11 have begun a romantic relationship, much to Hopper's chagrin. He later threatens Mike into agreeing not to see her. Dustin returns from summer camp and sets up a radio tower to contact his new girlfriend Susie, but instead intercepts a Russian transmission. Will privately senses that the Mind Flayer may still be alive. Rats congregate in a mill and explode into an organic mass. On his way to a sexual encounter with Mrs. Wheeler, Billy is run off the road by an unseen creature and is dragged inside the mill, therefore becoming the new host. That's what Chapter 1 is of Season 3. I'm not exactly sure what it is called. I don't have it off the top of my head, and I don't have it here. But chapter 2 is called The Mallrats, directed and written by the Duffer Brothers, and it is Billy escapes the mill after the creatures induces him in a vision of the Upside Down where he meets a doppelganger. Tormented by further visions and voices, Billy is guided by the creature into kidnapping his fellow lifeguard Heather Holloway and bringing her to the creature. Nancy and Jonathan, working as interns at the Hawkins Post, investigate the home of Mrs. Driscoll, an elderly woman concerned about the rabid rats eating her fertilizer, and fail to notice one of the rats exploding into an organic mass. Max and Eleven bond while shopping at Starcourt. Eleven breaks up with Mike after he lies to her to avoid seeing her. Joyce investigates a strange loss of magnetism among objects at her home and workplace. Dustin meets Steve, who works at the mall's ice cream parlor with Robin, a former classmate. The three translate the Russian radio message and determine that it must be a code. So that's where episode 2 ends. And we move on to episode 3, which is called The Case of the Missing Lifeguard. 11 uses her powers to spy on Mike and later Billy, who senses her presence. She and Max discover that Billy has gone missing, and Nancy and Jonathan find reports of missing fertilizer and strange behavior among rats across town, and discover Mrs. Driscoll herself eating fertilizer in her home. Robin decodes the Russian communication, which points to a shipment arriving at Starcourt that night. She, Steve, and Dustin spot armed Russian soldiers making the delivery. Joyce convinces Hopper that the demagnetation stems from an electromagnetic device at the abandoned Hawkins lab when they go to investigate. Hopper is attacked by Grigori, a Russian soldier, and Max and 11 track down Billy and Heather to the home of Heather's parents. And after they leave, Billy and Heather subdue her parents, which Will senses, realizing that the Mind Flayer is alive. Dun dun dun. And then we move on to chapter 4. Billy and Heather bring her parents to the mill, where they are possessed by the Mind Flayer, now a physical creature composed of flesh from the rats. Hopper recalls Grigori meeting with the town mayor Larry Klein, and he and Joyce force Klein to reveal that Starcourt is a Russian front buying abandoned properties across Hawkins. At Starcourt, Dustin, Steve, and Robin, alongside Lucas's sister Erica, discover that the mall's loading dock is an elevator, which traps them beneath the mall. Nancy and Jonathan are fired by their boss, Heather's father, for harassing Mrs. Driscoll. Nancy nonetheless visits Driscoll at the hospital out of suspicion and watches her become possessed by the Mind Flayer. Will receives his connection to the Mind Flayer to Mike, Lucas, and 11, speculating that it has possessed Billy. They devise a plan to trap Billy in the pool sauna to confirm he is possessed, but Billy escapes and nearly kills them all till 11 subdues him. Billy returns to the mill where dozens of town people have since been possessed. And that is where episode 4 ends. Super, super creepy. Like, they had really weird music with a male and female singing, and it was just super creepy. And then we have chapter 5, which is called The Flayed. And Hopper and Joyce search one of the abandoned properties, discovering a hidden lab. Grigori arrives to kill them, and they narrowly escape with a hostage, a Russian scientist named Alexei, in tow. Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Erica arrive in a Russian lab underneath Starcourt and hide from Russian soldiers unloading crates from the elevator. Attempting to find communications room, the Dustin discovers a large testing area where scientists are trying to force open a portal to the Upside Down. As Alexei does not speak English, Hopper and Joyce take him to Murray, the only Russian speaker they know, to translate. Grigori tries to follow them but loses the trail. Nancy and Jonathan regroup with Mike, Lucas, 11, and Max, and then they theorize that Billy and Driscoll are both possessed by the Mind Flayer, who is using them to flay or possess people to create an army. The group decides to visit Driscoll at the hospital to learn more but find her gone. They are attacked by Tom and Bruce, who are now part of the Flayed, who, after Nancy and Jonathan kill them, dissolves into single organic masses, resembling the Mind Flayer. And then chapter 6 is called E Pluribus Unum. I'm not sure what that means. I'm assuming it's backwards, but I'm not really gonna try that. 11, who had just been reconciled with Mike, uses her powers to incapacitate the Mind Flayer, forcing it to flee to the mill. In the Russian lab beneath Starcourt, Steve and Robin are captured, drugged, and interrogated, but Dustin and Erica manage to rescue them. With Murray translating, Hopper and Joyce hold Alexei hostage, forcing him to reveal that the Russians are attempting to access the Upside Down and that they are opening a portal beneath Starcourt. Hopper calls Owens to warn the U.S. government of the threat, but Joyce insists that they return to Hawkins immediately, fearing their kids may be involved. Grigori corners Klein at the Hawkins Independence Day Fair, demanding he step up efforts to find Hopper. Mike inadvertently admits his love for 11. To find the Mind Flayer, 11 uses her powers in an attempt to physically communicate with Billy, learning of his troubled childhood and finding the Flayer at the mill. Billy senses 11's presence, giving the Mind Flayer access to her location, and reveals that the Mind Flayer's plan is to kill her in revenge for closing the gate. The Flayed converge on the mill, dissolving it into an organic mass and merging with the Mind Flayer, so making it so much bigger, which, like, holy shit. And that's where chapter 6 ends. And now we're moving on to chapter 7, which is called The Bite. 11 and others determine that the Mind Flayer is coming for her since she was the one who previously closed the gate. Will senses the Mind Flayer approaching and it attacks them before they flee, wounding 11. Dustin and Erica drag a drugged Steve and Robin to the movie theater in Starcourt. 11's group breaks into a supermarket to help her treat her wounds and gather more supplies. Dustin contacts them over walkie-talkie to try and explain their situation before he loses battery power. 11 uses her power to find Dustin, and the group takes off for the mall. Again, having to readjust. I've been sitting on the floor for an hour now. Steve admits he has feelings for Robin, but she comes out to him as a lesbian. Hopper's group makes their way to the fairgrounds in Hawkins to find the children, where they are spotted by Klein, who alerts the Russians. Alexei is fatally shot by Grigori in front of Murray, and he eventually dies. Murray, Hopper, and Joyce evade several Soviet agents and learn that the agents are looking for the children at the mall. At the mall, 11's group arrives in time to stop the Russians from shooting Dustin's group. 11 collapses in front of the children, her wound pulsing. And that's where chapter 7 ends. And now we get to chapter 8, which is the final episode. And a lot happens. 11 rids herself of the piece of the Mind Flayer embedded in her wound, rendering her powerless. Hopper's group arrives, and the plans are made to take 11's group to safety, while Hopper, Joyce, and Murray destroy the machine, with Dustin and Erica navigating them from his radio tower. Billy and the Mind Flayer trap 11's group at the mall. The others attack the Mind Flayer with fireworks as 11 frees Billy from its control. Billy sacrifices himself, protecting 11, Mike, and Max. Hopper fights and kills Grigori, getting himself trapped with the machine in the process. Out of time, Joyce is forced to trigger the explosion, closing the gate, with Hopper being seemingly disintegrated in the process. The Mind Flayer dies as Dr. Owens arrives with military forces. 3 months later, the deaths are covered up, as normal, and Starcourt is destroyed and a disgraced Klein is arrested. 3 months later, the Byers family and a still powerless 11 proceeds to move out of Hawkins. Mike and 11 confess their love for each other and make plans to meet at Thanksgiving. In Kamchatka, Russia, Russian guards are instructed to feed a prisoner, but not the American, to a captive Demogorgon. And that is it for season 3. We have a couple more things to talk about, and then the video will be wrapped up for the day. This is by far my favorite season. I love how the characters had their development, especially Elle and Max with their friendship. I mean, it was about time that 2 of the main females got along. Like, seriously. Like, they barely had any interaction in season 2, which I guess is understandable. Also, it covered many topics like breakups, starting relationships, breakups, good ways to set boundaries between a teenager and their parents, but also bad ways to do so. Hopper was an example of like I'm not saying what he did was bad, he just didn't know how to handle it, while Joyce was there trying to give him advice. Their friendship is so cute. Unfortunately, I was hoping they'd become a couple, but that did not happen. We also got introduced to some new people. Robin Buckley, she's an amazing character because, let's be honest, Steve needed himself a best friend who was his age. They make an amazing duo. I'm super excited to kind of see where their friendship is going to go in season 4, which at the time of this, it is 12:58, which means we have about an hour left. After this video, I'm going to go to bed, so I'm probably going to watch it, and you guys will get my reaction from it over the weekend because it's Memorial Day and I have stuff planned. They make an amazing duo. Super excited to see more chemistry from the 2 of them. I also really like them all. Like, as a teenager who loves shopping, and it being a huge part of a plot, because that plunges my favorite series into the culture set of the 80s that we all know and love. Like, it was just super exciting for me because everything felt so more normal. Like, they were trying to live normal lives while saving the world. Again, for the 3rd time. And finally, at the time of this video being published, we are mere hours away from season 4 being released. So let's talk about the content we have received from it. So we all know that Hopper is indeed alive and is being imprisoned in a Russian camp. That was one of the first things we got when season 4 was being talked about. Like, literally, it was one of the first things, and I literally flipped my shit. Like, I was so excited. The Byers have moved to California with 11, and the rest of the gang is back in Hawkins, so that's like Max, Mike, Dustin, Steve, and Robin. We also know that this takes place on spring break 6 months after the ending of season 3. We have also seen the first 8 minutes of season 4, which was super intense, bro. So the first 8 minutes of season 4 takes place 4 years before season 1. So in 1979, we actually meet Dr. Brenner again. His character comes back. And we follow him as he goes through what seems like a normal day for him, where he goes to his job at Hawkins Lab. And while we see that Elle wasn't the only kid that the lab had. So I think there were 13 total, if I'm correct. During a lesson with 10, Brenner hears a commotion outside, and upon investigation, he is hit with a door, knocking him out. When he comes to, he has found that the kids have all been killed, minus 11, and she's covered in what seems to be their blood. The scene ends with him yelling, "What did you do?" Now, I think there's more to it than that, but unfortunately, that's all we know right now. And check back soon for a reaction to season 4 of Stranger Things. And it is currently 1 a.m, so I'm going to sign off and go to bed. Make sure to like and comment and stay tuned for more content. Bye, guys.